Executive Yuan building. I'm actually not in this office much. I'm mostly in the Social Innovation Lab in Taipei City. I don't know whether you're planning to visit or whether you will visit it.
They visited yesterday. You gave them an orientation.
Oh, that's excellent. Yeah, so you saw this interesting basement and the kitchen. The kitchen is the most important one. Yeah, and that's where I hold my office hours. But in any case, I'm really happy to just interact with any of your questions or any of the topics that you would like to explore more in depth. We have maybe 45 minutes, and so how would you like to proceed?
Yeah, I think Socrates, maybe you guys have like any questions or if you like something that we'll talk about. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, just in any sequence, make it informal. Yeah, even though this is a very formal place, like super formal, but
Thank you so much. First of all, we are a mix of the group from government, also corporate, also social enterprise, myself, and also universities.
Okay.
So we have a mix attention and interesting, but we have a kind of a mutual goal for social or society or sustainability development.
Yes.
So that's what we like to learn from Taiwan, as well as the digital ministry, and also the project that you've done, for example, the Social Innovation Lab, as a national plan, and you drive forward the open space for community to join and to help government to promote the social impact into the society, as well as the collaboration with the government, as an open platform, open data, that's very important. And also the university, also academia roles.
Okay.
If anyone would like
If
to
anyone would
share,
like to know more, please, any other interests or
I think
focus?
it'd be nice if you can share some kind of like digital transformation, because everyone talking about digital, right?
Yes.
They know
I
that
don't know, I
digital
don't talk
is
about
a
it
very
much.
good thing. But to utilize it to transform the corporation or even transform the government is not the easy process. So if you can share some of the transformation process,
Okay.
the success and development, I think that should be a good learning.
Okay, so like a theory of change for digital transformation in the public sector.
Theories and your real practice.
Yeah, some worked, some didn't. Yeah, okay. Okay, that's awesome. Any other topics of interest? Yes.
So basically in Thailand we'll talk about the social entrepreneur that mostly related to charities and low technologies segment. But for the past 2 years, for the past 2 days, we've learned that to really push forward business agency, you have to really open for the technologies and innovation. But a lot of people kind of scared of science. So basically there's really off topic for a lot of social enterprise. So basically, how do you make it less scare for people who want to maintain their social activities?
So social above technology.
Yes.
Okay, that's a very interesting angle to look at it. Other focus areas?
As far as big data here, I think that your government collects the big data for do analytics and become some projects. What project you do and how you do it and how important for the people.
Right. So analytics and the social value of it.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Okay. Other focus areas?
From the university, now in Thailand we talk a lot about social innovation, and in Thailand we know that the country is actually very centralized, and now we move for regionalization, and university come as a part of being regionalization of the technology and innovation. And for the university now we have the campaign for doing the science parks, and there are about 13 of them across the country. And the ministry allocates some budget to actually have a science park in university to bring the research from the university and link with the industry in the region or SME to improve their products to have more value in terms of economy value.
Right.
So I don't know whether you can have a lesson to share about how we can make a regionalization of technology using university and platform, something like that.
By regionalization, you mean contributing to the revitalization of the region around the university?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, regionalization. It's a new word for me, so it's good. I'll be using that word in the future. Okay, it's a good word. Okay, any other interests?
Upon the National Innovation Agency,
Yes.
which is under the government, I government, and normally we are the funding agency to the grant or support the money grant to the SE and the private sector, and move to the Taiwan mechanism to support to help the SE, the social enterprise, and maybe you can share your experience to support
Right.
the SE.
Like from a funder's
Yeah.
perspective,
Yeah.
how do we fund things that may or may not go wrong? Right, as opposed to the grant, which is only two things that will go right, but will not be on our expectation. Right? So how to be more risk taking in the funding strategy? That is actually a really good topic in public governance as well, because if it fails, actually the funding agency also bears some of the costs in the social perception. Like you fund this with a lot of money, and these are all our taxes, and it failed, and now what, right? So how to mitigate against this when you're working with social entrepreneurs? Okay, other questions?
Yes, the data accountability, because you mentioned non-government and other stakeholders. How do you
Accountability?
Yeah. How you trust them? How do you collect the data? Like that?
Right, so accountability, I hear two things, right? About collection,
Yes.
and also about the processing.
Yes.
Okay, in the data cycle. Okay, this is good. Other questions?
Yes.
Yes.
My name is Pim Porn, so I actually as a communication for social movement right now. So I would like to know more about how you engage people, so many people to supporting the movement in Taiwan, and also the social co-creation. Like you also have to work with travel ministry, right, to driving them to join.
Right, so the outreach
Society.
strategy
Yes.
for the social movements that are working with the government, of course. I cannot talk about anti-government movements. They have their own outreach strategy, I'm sure, but I'm not the expert on that. So things that are pertaining to sustainable development, and how can we encourage the outreach strategy for them, right? Okay, other thoughts? If not, we'll just answer in order, or in any order, really. So I look at this and I see two things. One is more about how the various stakeholders, because we have a lot of stakeholders, can form a good, virtuous cycle working relationship with one another that drives the common goals forward without being locked into the older structures or the institutions. It could be about funding cycle, it could be about legal definition of social enterprise, it could be about the different regions, different characteristics and so on, but how can we enable collaboration among the differences? So that's the thing that I hear. And another thing that I hear is how to use digital and data to make sure that we are on the same path, to make sure that people look at the map and discover that we are on the same path after all, and instead of just blindly following what is the most trendy, we should always do analytics and look at how well we are actually doing. And so performance indicators, analytics, and accountability, and that is kind of the second theme that I hear. So I will try to answer using those two angles, and if your question is not sufficiently answered, just let me know, and we'll have the second round of questions. Okay, right. So about collaboration across differences, this is what our President, Dr. Tsai Ing-wen, said in her inauguration speech. She said, before we think of democracy and we think of showdown between two opposing values, but now democracy must become a conversation between many diverse values. And a lot of the structures in place, I tend to think about this rope as the career public service, the institution, right? We're caught between the people who are for GDP growth, for economy, and people who care about environmental sustainability. And they all have their representatives. They may be MPs, they may be ministers, and we are like in between and trying not to break among the tensions. Or there may be people who really love new technology, the science and innovators, technologists, that really push for the latest advance in technology. And there are also people who are more afraid of the social changes brought by technology, and they want to conserve the social norm, the social justice, the social relationship that they have already invested and built that could be disrupted by those technologies. And again, they fight to keep their positions basically. And add to that is the role of social media, because each of these people now don't have to talk through a representative. They can start a hashtag campaign on social media, and once they do, there is no representative to talk about. It's just, you know, a leaderless movement of people feeling very angry about something, and that something is a hashtag, and it's almost impossible for government to say, hey, who represent the hashtag, let's have a conversation. Nobody represent that hashtag. Right? So the tension doubles, right? The rope really cannot make new representative for each trending hashtag. It's impossible in our institutions, so we need to switch to a different way of governance. And we call it co-governance, collaborative governance, or co-gov in UN speech. So co-gov, or collaborative governance, asks a very simple question. So we have a emerging new technology, and we have various different positions around it. But can we all experience in a safe space, in a sandbox, a little bit of it, and then figure out what are our common values, given these different positions of ours. And once we reach common values, are there innovations that can deliver those common values without sacrificing anybody's interests? And what we call Pareto improvements. And so this is an important question to keep asking, and this is indeed my job as digital minister, to make sure that people can keep asking each other these questions. And so this conversation, for example, we will make a transcript, but we will not compromise your privacy. So we'll just say an audience member asked this question, and then I will say that this is my answer, of course, but you will all receive a link. So if you think that your question needs to be kind of changed somehow, add some supplemental information or whatever, you can all edit it for 10 days before we publish online. But we always publish online. So every week, every Wednesday, I'm in this space for 3 ways of meeting. First of all, on the early morning to the noon, everybody can just walk in and chat with me for 40 minutes. The afternoon is for pre-booked scheduled meetings. And in the evening, I also have dinner together with people, for example, from the GovZero, which is a civic tech movement with the civic technologists. It's a co-creation meeting. So either of these 3 meetings, we always make sure that what we have talked about is online. So on the Say It platform, for example, you can see very easily, if we have internet of course, that you can see all our conversations is kept in an accountable way online. And so the result of this design is that people understand not only the what of the policy that's made, but also the why of policy making, of why people have raised these issues. So since I become digital minister, there's more than 1,000 meetings, including ones that I chair in the administration. I talk with more than 4,000 people on over 200,000 speeches. And so each of these, just as our conversation will be online, you will find it is actually a very, it's like a distributed ledger. Well, it's a kind of distributed ledger because it's stored on GitHub. So people can maintain it in a decentralized way, and people can discover why we are taking actions on some points of policies, and then like each and every word is full text searchable, so that we cannot just being quoted out of context, because that's the main thing that public service is afraid, is that you take, after a meeting, a few words out of context and talk to social media, and then people would likely to amplify what it actually meant.
How can we prevent that?
Yeah, so we just publish, like right on schedule, within 10 days. Everything, for example, these are the Minerva School, and they want to use Taipei as a campus. and then we brainstorm about ways that they can work with various university social responsibility programs. And so, and then, for example, I talked about something about SDG, saying that SDG is universal, because anything that can provoke regional tension did not make it to the SDG. So if they make it to the SDG, it means it's global. Now, maybe this word can be taken out of context, I don't know how, but if people search for it, they can very easily find this, and they can click show context. And they can see the context in which that I talk about this. So make sure that the investigative journalists actually have an edge over the tabloids and the social media, because they have access to the entire conversation and can add their own perspective to it. And just using full text search, everybody can see what the words that I said and the visitor said, and making sure that they're understood in their originally intended way. And so this effect of both an open office hour and this co-gov-oriented radical transparency means that people who come to me and lobby for my attention always have to talk in terms of the public, right? So we just had a lobbying session with Corey here about the ways to encourage the townships and precincts and municipalities of all levels to encourage people to save more energy. But all his argument is based on, for example, the goal 13, climate change action and things like that. And because if we are closed doors and off the record, sometimes people would lobby for things that are only good for them, but bad for everybody else. But because this is radically transparent, people know it. People only lobby for things that are good for the public. Right, so that answers the first part of the question, is that people see different positions, but through this way, people have to make the case for public benefit only, and that is really the only thing that I publish. So this is also our outreach, because each movement can just spread the word by themselves. And so the other thing about how to make the technology changes not afraid by people, but embrace it, right? So it's about safety parameters. So just this month, actually, we issued the first car plate for self-driving vehicles. And these are self-driving bus on the bus lane in Taipei City, near the Taipei City Hall on the Xinyi Road. And maybe next month or so, there will be a self-driving ship, actually boat, on the Love River in Kaohsiung, powered by renewable solar energy. But these are rolled out only because there is a sandbox law in our continental law system that says people can tweak and change it. And people have already played with their precursor in the Social Innovation Lab. So the past couple of years, we have just been posting those self-driving vehicles, but these are tricycles. They're very slow, like slower than a person running. So it's very safe. If it bumps into a wall, nobody gets hurt. And so people, when they hear about self-driving vehicle, they don't think about something that's very fast, like a bullet train. They think about something that if you run, you can actually, catch it, right? You can stop it, and it's something very tangible. And our bus, again, starts very slow, right? And so basically, this offers a way for the entire social norm to be formed with a interaction to the market, and literally with the market, because next to the Social Innovation Lab is the Jianguo flower market in weekend. And so there's a lot of people buying flowers. And when we hosted this kind of public exhibitions of self-driving vehicles, we made sure that everybody can join, because we're tearing down the wall actually to the Social Innovation Lab. You saw it, right? So you can see through from the street what exhibitions are doing. And so people, after they shop for some flowers, remember an elderly couple who just walk by and with some orchid flowers or something, and say, "Minister, what are you doing with those shopping baskets, with those shopping carts and trolleys?" Like, these are not really shopping carts, these are self-driving vehicles. You hop on one, you tell it where you want to go, it drives you there, right? And they're like, we don't want to be driven places. We want, because if all you have is orchid flower, pots of flower, I guess everything look like a shopping basket. They want to put it into the basket, and they want it to follow them around in the market. They don't want to be driven to places. And they want those shopping baskets, they keep referring to it as that. When it's full, you can summon another one, so that the full ones are on the behind and the empty one stays right by their side, so they can keep shopping and putting into it. And this is a what we call a norm-based way of envisioning about technology. It's not the technologists asking the people to adapt to technology. It is we bringing technology to the people and ask people, what would you like to do with technology? And that is social innovation, because everybody can participate for the common good. And so they raised this point, and we're like, of course it's open source, and so the local university, in this case the Taipei Tech, makes sure that they have the open source and open hardware capability to plug and play the component to make that vision from the social norms happen. And so they just tweaked it, the bicycle, so that they have two eyes. They can follow people who they are following, and then they can reach the hand gestures and facial emotions, and they can participate in, this is kind of co-domestication, right? So that people feel safe with these vehicles around, instead of thinking that they're uncontrollable things. They would be just like companions to people in the market. And once the norm with the market is fully formed, then we tell the technologists to then take these into code and start coding architectures that we already know conforms to the social norm. Like it should in Taiwan first yield to the elderly, and then maybe the handicapped people in wheelchairs, and then maybe pregnant women, and then children. Even though we know that in Boston, in MIT Media Lab, they run a very similar social co-domestication test, and they found that people want to yield to children and don't care about the elders. But in Taiwan, we care about the elders, right? So different society have different social norm, and this visible way of showing the social norm to people then can turn this code into laws and regulations. So the laws and regulations are tracking the social norm by maybe 1 year to 3 years. That's written in our sandbox law. So it's not ahead, but it's not behind. It's tracking the social norm evolution in collaboration with technology. And people know that there is a very predictable tempo from a new idea to the sandbox application, to the realization of whether it's a good idea or not. And that answers the funder's question, right? So it's like reverse lottery. We ask the investors to put in some sandbox applications in exchange for a limited time monopoly on being legal while everybody else doing the same thing is still illegal. So there's a first mover's advantage. But in return, they have to share the post-mortem, right? If it fails, then everybody learns a little bit, and it must be open innovation. And so if everybody learns a little bit and they spend a lot of money, it's like the lottery in reverse. But we say that everybody benefit from it. But if it wins the lottery, meaning that people really love the idea, even though the law may track behind in 2 years or 3 years, we say they're still legal for their business when the MPs are figuring it out. But everybody else is still illegal. And so they're essentially a monopoly during the lawmaking stage. And the lawmakers, after they finish the law, of course, everybody enter the market. But that is the hope that we provide to the innovators, so that they would love to apply for sandboxes in all the different ministries. So this is really general purpose. Anybody can apply for it in any regulations owned by any ministry, aside from funding terrorism and money laundering, which we know the experiment results, so we don't have to experiment, but everything else is fair game and can be challenged. So I think that answers a few questions from the table. And the next parts pertaining to data, and I will keep it short, the basic idea, very simply put, is that we see data as something that everybody can produce, and that produce trust the more people participate in this governance. And we use an annual event called the Presidential Hackathon to form these cross-sectoral data collaboratives. And the idea is very simple. Every year, starting in April, we ask people, hundreds of teams, to propose their ideas, how to enable sustainable infrastructure using technology. But sustainable means any of the 17, so a lot of different ideas, right? And then at the end, after 3 months, there will be 5 winning teams. and each of them will be trilingual in the sense that it has at least a public servant, at least a private sector, at least an academic or social sector person, and all three need to confirm that this is feasible. And so we coach and make cohorts of these trilingual teams. So one of the example was the Taiwan Water Corporation last year, who proposed the idea that in the small pilot region called Keelung, they were hiring people to listen to the pipes to make sure that they are not leaking. And they are leaking, they're fixing those leaks, right? But most of their day is spent to listen to pipes that are not leaking, and making recruitment actually very difficult because the younger people don't really want to do the boring job, to put it frankly. And so they want to make a assistive intelligence or AI chatbot that every time they wake up, the repair people wake up, they can look there at their line chat room, and the chatbot will tell them where are the most likely leaking places based on where they are, and they can interact with the chatbot to get the details. And once they visited the site, more likely than not, the leaking point will be real. So if they visit 3 sites every day they will face a real leak, and they will be creative and devising ways to fix it instead of doing repetitive work, which is listening to pipes that are not leaking. And so within 3 months, they discovered a way to shorten the 2-month period to 2 days in a small region, in the Keelung region, and it works really well. And so they receive a trophy. Now, most of the time, the public sector innovations works really well for a small pilot, but their director general may say, this is lower in our priority than some of our other stuff. So even the society thinks it's a good idea, we simply don't have the budget to scale it to the entire country. And maybe that idea just withers, right? We see a lot of that in public sector. But now, because the trophy is shaped like this, and with a small micro projector at the bottom, and if you turn it on, it projects Dr. Tsai Ing-wen, the president, handing this trophy to the team. There's a short film about it. And so this is a very meta trophy. It describes itself, and you can summon the president on any meeting. And this is very useful because if their DG says that there's no budget, you just summon the president. And they're like, oh, we have the budget to make it happen countrywide, because this represents the presidential promise that whatever they have done in the past 3 months, because it's affirmed by the society, it has social legitimacy, we are committed to make it happen within 12 months in a national scale. And we deliver 5 out of the 5 for the previous year. So we gain a lot of credit also. So more people participated in this year. And so one of the other cases which required a law change last year was people who work in remote islands like the Green Island or Orchid Island and so on. There's many smaller islands around Taiwan. And sometimes the clinic only have a general practitioner or even only a nurse at night. And when people send their loved ones or their family members who are suffering from major trauma or whatever to the clinic, sometimes they don't trust the local clinician and insist that helicopters come and pick their family members to the main Taiwan island for specialized treatment. But last year there was a helicopter crash during the night, and people were really looking into the root cause of that. And the local nurse said that it's because we're not trusted. And so they try to fix that with technology, and they come with this really good idea of just connecting through video conference, through a high-speed connection, to let the family say that what they want for treatment, and have the specialized doctor as well as the hospital in charge of the helicopter both say, oh, this can be treated locally. And this convinces the family members. And the nurse could also follow the instruction by the doctors to do the treatments, to also learn something, so that they will be more likely to stay in that place because they can learn something constantly, right? And so this is a really good idea. They piloted, it really worked for a small case, a small island in 3 months, and they got the trophy. And when they went back to the minister said this requires a law change because what you did was during a sandbox, right? But that's not legal. Our Telemedicine Act actually forbids nurses to do medical treatments based on a doctor's supervision from remote. They can only do that with a doctor by their side. And we're like, no, but the president gave the award. So they just summoned the president. And then the Minister of Health have a conversation with the Minister of Interior. And they both prepared this proposal bill. And the MPs all said, okay, of course. So now it's legal. And we made sure that more than 100 points, not only remote island but also indigenous nations, are now using the system devised by by the last year's winning team. And so every year, what we're trying to do here is to make digital transformation a business for everybody. It is not just for large-scale teams or companies or so on, but just from the social sector. And each of the social sector participants can be a data producer and a data steward as well. And that answers the data accountability question. For example, for the video conference, for the telemedicine, of course, you have to trust that the video is really not tampered. The cybersecurity is good on all the 3 points of video conference. And if you have more than 2,000 people, for example, measuring the PM2.5, that's air quality indicators, on their balcony, on their schools, as a primary school education material to teach the students not only about environment, but also about data stewardship, then you need some new design that let all those 2,000 people who don't know each other to trust each other's numbers. So they used, for example, distributed ledger, DLT, or also known as blockchain, to make sure that people cannot go back in time and modify other people's numbers. And so they form what we call a data coalition, meaning that they all produce data. The data wins legitimacy. If you have 5 friends nearby that measures the air quality as this, and the environmental minister's device is farther away but measures as this, of course you're going to trust your friend's number and not the minister's number, right? And so they have higher legitimacy than the ministry. So they can bargain with the ministry, saying that we will allow you to join our network, but only if you agree to put small air boxes in these areas with gaps. And where are those gaps? These are the industrial parks. So the science parks, actually. The industrial parks basically may or may not be contributing to air pollution, but people really don't know because you cannot break into a private property and install your air boxes there. So they really want to know. And it turns out we own the lamps in industrial parks so that we can install their air box on the lamps and contribute to their network and gaining legitimacy concurrently. And so the government contributes and never controls this kind of data coalitions, and we encourage them to publish everything to GitHub. And so people with Raspberry Pi, with Arduino, with OpenPower can very easily participate in this Taiwan-initiated network without paying any patent or copyright license fee to Taiwan. And so, for example, New Zealand discovered about this water savior leak detection, and they invited the same team to New Zealand for 3 more months of co-creation to stop the water leakage for them as well. And so this is a way what we call open innovation. And so this year, for example, there's a lot of teams, and as you can see, each team have to pick a SDG target as their emblem to show to the world what SDG target they are helping to achieve. And so our social legitimacy is gained by a new voting method. And this voting method also keeps the outreach interesting and fun. So to answer the question about outreach of SDG solution, this is how we do it. In Taiwan, we have a national participation platform called join.gov.tw that is a one-stop shop for e-petition, for participatory budgeting, for regulation pre-announcement, for pretty much anything that has to do with participation. And it's supported not only by the administration, but also by the National Auditing Office, and also by all the different municipalities and cities and counties. And of course, each of them have their stakeholders, and in total, we have more than 10 million visitors. Considering Taiwan is 23 million people, it's a lot of people, and maybe around 1 million people who register an account. And for people who register an account, we say that you can participate in the selection from the 100 or more 132 proposals to the top 20. So this selection is by people voting. Now, if you design the voting method so that people can vote, all their vote into the same project, they will just mobilize. And once you announce the top 20, a lot of people will feel that they have lost, like it's a popularity contest, and we don't want that, right? So we use a new invention, a new social innovation called quadratic voting. Everybody gets 99 points, and you can vote for anything. Like if you want to vote to use computer vision to detect sea debris to reduce marine pollution, that's a good one, right? So, but if you want to vote 1 vote, it costs you 1 point. If you want to vote 2 votes, it will cost you 4 points. 3 votes will cost 9 in total, and so on. So it's quadratic. The marginal cost is the same as the marginal return. okay? And so because of that, if you have 99 points, you can vote only at most 9 votes, right? And then you don't want to squander the 18 you have left, right? So maybe you will look into maybe this one that says we can use machine learning to detect like Panama Papers shell companies very easily and quickly. Oh, this is a good idea. So maybe you vote 4 votes and you still have 2 points left. So you're incentivized to look further into at least 2 other cases. And you find an airbox team proposing water box and do the same thing, but on the water pathway for irrigation so that people can detect which industrial plant is polluting the organic plant on the arable land. And if they detect successfully, actually by law, we will cut electricity and water supply from the ministry to that industrial plant. So if you are not polluting, you will also be incentivized to join this citizen data network to prove that the pollution actually comes from the upstream and not for us, right? So it's a really good idea. And it's certainly worth more than 1 vote because you only have 2 points left. And then you will think, oh, maybe I take some votes back. And maybe you do a 7 and 7, 49 and 49. Maybe you spread it out thinner. Maybe you concentrate more. But at the end of it, more people look at all those different ideas than people who would be mobilized to vote on one thing only. And because people on average spread for like 5 or 7 projects at the end, most people feel they have won when we announce top 20. And this is very important because it gains social legitimacy. So with more than 200,000 votes cast, it gives a lot of legitimacy to the top 20. And that's the secret because the president cannot really just change the law. They request MPs to say yes. But the MPs see the QV result and think, oh, if we change the law to enable telemedicine, it will, of course, increase my chance of re-election because nobody is against that. And so just by using this novel participation method, we ensure both the social legitimacy and the government legitimacy for the social innovators. And that is also how we hold each other really accountable. And by accountability, we always mean mutual accountability in the sense that the civil society, the private sector, when they promise to do something and they have delivered it, we always see it in this collaborative governance. I think I answered all the questions here. So for the second round.
SDG?
Yes.
That's aligned to the government SDG, right?
Yes. Yeah, of course. So
and how often that the government changed the SDG?
The voluntary national review topics, you mean? Because the SDG, we just use the UN ones.
Yeah, I
The
mean,
the
you
169.
select like 5 of them, for example, or 6 of them.
Yeah. Right. I just showed like
Yeah.
these.
All of this.
Right.
Like how often that the government or the nation change the goal?
Right. We don't change our goal. We wrote our national voluntary review and our national goals just last year. So of course we look at how can we improve on it.
In Thailand, we change
Yeah.
every 4 years.
Okay. Well, we just published our first report, so we don't have a clear view of how long it's going to maintain. It has a lot to do with the result of presidential election. Yeah, of course, right? We want to make sure that the president promised for the next 4 years, but maybe not the next 8 years. And right, we try to do that at the beginning of this term, but the legislators say you are not allowed to make 8-year plans and 8-year budgets. And we have to propose the 8-year budget into like the second 4 year as an appendix for the first 4 year. And so that's how liberal democracy is supposed to work, I guess. But in any case, so we may change every 4 years. But if President Tsai gets the second term, it's very likely it's the same national goals that's going to drive through. So I hope that answered the question. But these are from the social sector and the private sector, and these are not the government goals. They determine how they are going to accomplish the global goals. Right. And so, yeah, another round of questions.
It's very smart idea to create the ownership.
It's bottom up.
Yeah.
Right.
So
It's
we
very much
distribute
grassroots.
the profitability and they engage in their goals, more or less.
That's exactly right. to cover every goal.
Inclusive thinking.
Exactly, and we also make sure that whatever they commit to do is not just like a hackathon where only the winner gets the visibility. We also made sure that there is a shared platform called si.taiwan.gov.tw where we tour around all the different indigenous, rural, and remote areas and meet them where they are in the town hall places where they're already meeting. And so we bring the listening skills to them, but we don't ask them to come to Taipei. And this is very important because in Taipei, they may not have the surrounding of people who support their cases. They maybe make a 40-minute case, but it's very hard for me to understand what they're talking about, right? So usually every other Tuesday, I just do an ethnographic for just hang out with people for a day or two, and then meet them where they are. And then I travel by myself with a very small staff. But with me, in those town hall meetings, we're always joined by 12 ministries, section chief or higher, pertaining to the issues cared by the local people through this kind of projection. We use Zoom to connect 5 large municipalities with the centers and co-op and indigenous elders and so on. And so this has the really good effect in that the public servants here, usually in national government, they hear about these people's stories only in very summarized, highly abstract numbers. And so sometimes they think they fix the problem based on the number, but actually they cause more problems. When they cause the problems, their minister can always blame them. And when the ideas is good, always the minister or the mayor gets the credit. And so for a career public servant, it's a no-win situation. If they innovate, right, they have to really make it a personal sacrifice for the public good. But in this way, which is a very creative way of working, they join us in our social innovation lab or in other municipality social innovation labs. There's 5 spots for them to congregate, but they listen to the local people's agenda and they can just start brainstorming across ministries. They don't have to copy each ministry documents because they're literally sitting next to one another. And so they can just ideate and fix the problem or solve the problem or reinterpret their regulations very quickly. And if their ideas work, in Taiwan we say meeting face to face gives 30% of trust. And in high definition video, 20% of trust. And so maybe with 5G we can get to 25%. But in any case, we make sure in Taiwan broadband is a human right. So anywhere, even on top of Yushan, theoretically we can do this kind of virtual town hall meetings. And so local people really feel they set the agenda, they're being listened to, the good ideas, the public servants gets credit instantly. And if they say something insensitive that upset the local people, that think is a really bad idea, well, you cannot punch people over a projector, right? So I'm the only one in the vicinity, so I absorb the risk. And the public servants get all the credit. And in this area, everybody become a social innovator, even if they work in the public service. And so all the social innovations here is actually a bilingual website. We categorize in SI, social innovation, .taiwan.gov.tw, and so you can look at all the different counties and cities ideas, what social innovators are at work here, what are their proposals, what are the worked cases. The proposals are the ones that are still brewing, the cases are the ones that work really well, like the presidential hackathon winner, and we also do focus areas and work with popular media on, say, telemedicine, plastic, and education innovation as well. And so people can look at this with some really nice visual cards and things like that, and make sure that people can share it on social media. And every time when I tour around in the tour forums, all the official ministries are joined because I've been doing this for more than 2 years. And every time anyone who says anything really about resource connection, market channels, human resource regulation, advisory services. I'm sorry? Yeah, they all get into the system.
I mean, even though we are not like a Taiwanese.
No, yeah, of course. When we say broadband is a human right, we mean human right, not citizen right.
Human right.
Right. So long as you're a human, you should be able to enjoy, like even on high-speed rails, unlimited Wi-Fi for your use. And I think this is a very important thing to show that people we're serious about this being the global goal, not just the national goal. Because, for example, climate action, right? The carbon footprint doesn't know jurisdiction boundaries, and neither should our solutions for them. And so you can also upvote and downvote on the responses from each ministry. And so if we receive too many downvotes, we will just go look into it. And of course, everything is again on the public record as well. So you can see who asked it, where did they ask it, when did the question happen, and how they have replied to it. And so this is really a what we call a co-governing system that allows for responsive, inclusive, and representative decision-making by, again, taking technology to where people are instead of asking people to come to Taipei. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Maybe, yeah, one last question.
About 2-3 minutes.
Yeah, one last question. Yeah.
Right. I'm really interested in TV.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
so what's the usual demographic of people who normally make the vote? Because if some of the people, it seems a bit complicated, and for those people who don't understand it,
Yeah.
but probably have made the result pretty biased.
Yeah, of
So
course.
so what are the usual demographic of it? And do you normally cross-reference with the program who actually make the cut or winning team?
Yeah, we do. We actually publish everything to GitHub, so you can also use your own analysis.
And
Yeah.
do you also link to Sandbox as a tool for you to do the to take some of the experiments with basically that can get public exposure?
Yes, exactly. Yes. So QB we use it, and you can read about all its property and the cases that they work and they don't work. In the there's a book about it called Radical Markets. And Radical Markets outlines a lot more ideas, not just quadratic voting, but also, we don't have time to go into it, but called quadratic financing, which is a combination of crowdfunding and donation matching to make sure that we only fund things that are of good for the public. And this is, I think for a grant maker, this is a really good thing. And that the project called Gitcoin is already trying it out to really good result. And so this is another tool that we use. But to answer your question, the demographics-wise, we find in our participation platform, not just QB, it's there's no difference between the municipal and rural places. Maybe because we have broad consumer rights, but there is difference in age bracket. The most active ones are around 15 years old and 65, and that are the two spikes. And pretty much people in the middle don't participate as much as those two groups of people. And anecdotally, I don't have a real theory that for random control trials or something, but anecdotally, I think my hypothesis is that these two groups of people have more time on their hands. Everybody else has to work, and they're either retired or still in high school, right? And the second is that they kind of by default care less about their private interests and more about the public, about the next generation. One, because they're already retired, and the other because they are the next generation. And so if climate change gets really bad, they are the people who get hurt, right? And so the best petitions on the participation platform to ban plastic straws and things like that are actually from people who are 15 or 16 years old. And they're really good at social media marketing. And the idea, the idea that we always say here is the idea of reverse mentorship. So I'm 38 now, so I'm no longer young, right? So I should listen to young people, and the young people always show the direction, and the older people can make this direction happen. We can provide the momentum. But for example, this is from a reverse mentor of the Ministry of Labor, Huang Weixiang, you probably know him. And he is a social entrepreneur that works with those champions in world skills competition. So on the middle is the gold medalist of car painting, I think. And maybe cloud data center deployment or whatever. So they're champions, but not for sport, but for skills. And reverse mentor, he was just 20 something when he became the Minister of Labor's reverse mentor, said the minister should visit Russia this year because they have world skills there. They crowdfunded this video about it and say they should join the National Day Parade. Not just sport champion, but skill champion should join the National Day Parade. And our premier, because he convenes the National Youth Council for the Cabinet, which is the 12 ministries, each has 2 reverse mentors of this kind, and they decided to say, oh, we will then not only include them in all the future national days, including this year, but also introduce them to the basic education and university system so they can work with the local students to revamp their schools. so that they learn things about skills, have a role model, and then increase the idea of sustainability design and so on, and community action based only starting from their basic education schools. And so those champions become role models and teachers for the students to follow. And I use this example saying that people who are in their teens and early 20s, I think are really pointing the future direction, and we should just follow that direction, but making sure that it's implemented really well. And so I think youth engagement is one of the reasons of those demographic differences. And also they cannot vote really, so the only thing they can do is to use these online platforms, because you have to be of 18 to vote in referendum and 20 to vote in representative, but the most creative people are in there 15 or 16 years old. And so again, they spend a lot of time on those platforms. So of course there are a demographic difference, but so far we think it's still somewhat healthy. And so yeah, that's I hope answer your question. All right, so
Thank you.
that's all we have.
Thank you.
So thank you, and yeah, feel free just to email me directly, and I will just go around and swap name cards.
ถ่ายรูปถ่ายรูป
Thank you. And co-op and indigenous elders and so on. And so this has the really good effect in that the public servants here, usually in national government, they hear about these people's stories only in very summarized, highly abstract numbers. And so sometimes they think they fix the problem based on the number, but actually they cause more problems. When they cause the problems, their minister can always blame them. And when the ideas is good, always the minister or the mayor gets the credit. And so for a career public servant, it's a no-win situation. If they innovate, right, they have to really to make it a personal sacrifice for the public good. But in this way, which is a very creative way of working, they join us in our social innovation lab or in other municipalities' social innovation labs. There's 5 spots for them to congregate, but they listen to the local people's agenda, and they can just start brainstorming across ministries. They don't have to copy each ministry documents because they're literally sitting next to one another. And so they can just ideate and fix the problem or solve the problem or reinterpret their regulations very quickly. And if their ideas work, in Taiwan we say meeting face to face gives 30% of trust. And in high definition video, 20% of trust. And so maybe with 5G we can get to 35%. But in any case, we make sure in Taiwan broadband is a human right. So anywhere, even on top of Yushan, theoretically we can do this kind of virtual town hall meetings. And so local people really feel they set the agenda, they're being listened to, the good ideas, the public servants gets credit instantly. And if they say something insensitive that upset the local people, that think is a really bad idea, well, you cannot punch people over a projector, right? So I'm the only one in the vicinity, so I absorb the risk. And the public servants get all the credit. And in this area, everybody become a social innovator, even if they work in the public service. And so all the social innovations here is actually a bilingual website. We categorize in SI, social innovation, .taiwan.gov.tw, and so you can look at all the different counties and cities' ideas, what social innovators are at work here, what are their proposals, what are the worked cases. The proposals are the ones that are still brewing, the cases are the ones that work really well, like presidential hackathon winner, and we also do focus areas and work with popular media on, say, telemedicine, plastic, and education innovation as well. And so people can look at this with some really nice visual cards and things like that, and make sure that people can share it on social media. And every time when I tour around in the tour forums, all the official ministries are joined because I've been doing this for more than 2 years. And every time anyone who says anything really about resource connection, market channels, human resource regulation, and advisory services. I'm sorry? Yeah, they all get into the system.
I mean, even though we are not like a Taiwanese.
No, yeah, of course. When we say broadband is a human right, we mean human right, not citizen right.
Human right.
Right. So long as you're a human, you should be able to enjoy, like even on high-speed rails, unlimited Wi-Fi for your use. And I think this is a very important thing to show that people we're serious about this being the global goal, not just the national goal, because For example, climate action, right? The carbon footprint doesn't know jurisdiction boundaries, and neither should our solutions for them. And so you can also upload and download the responses from each ministry. And so if we receive too many downloads, we will just go look into it. And of course, everything is again on the public record as well. So you can see who asked it, where did they ask it, when did the question happen, and how they have replied to it. And so this is really a what we call a co-governing system that allows for responsive, inclusive, and representative decision making by again taking technology to where people are instead of asking people to come to Taipei. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Maybe one last
We
question.
have about 2-3 minutes.
Yeah. One last question. Yeah.
Right. I'm really interested in TV.
Yeah.
So what's the usual demographic of people who normally make the vote? Because if some of the people, it seems a bit complicated, and for those people who don't understand it,
Yeah.
but probably have made the result pretty biased.
Yeah. Of
So
course.
what are the usual demographic of it? And do you normally cross-reference with the program who actually make the cut or winning team?
Yeah, we do. We actually publish everything to GitHub, so you can also use your own analysis.
And
Yeah.
do you also link to Sandbox as a tool for you to do to take some of the experiments with basically that can get public exposure?
Yes, exactly. Yes. So QB we use it, and you can read about all its property and the cases that they work and they don't work. In the there's a book about it called Radical Markets. And radical markets outlines a lot more ideas, not just quadratic voting, but also we don't have time to go into it, but called quadratic financing, which is a combination of crowdfunding and donation matching to make sure that we only fund things that are of good for the public. And this is, I think, for a grant maker, this is a really good thing. And that the project called Gitcoin is already trying it out to really good result. And so this is another tool that we use. But to answer your question, the demographic graphics-wise, we find in our participation platform, not just QB, there's no difference between the municipal and rural places, maybe because we have broad consumer rights. But there is difference in age bracket. The most active ones are around 15 years old and 65. And that are the two spikes. And pretty much people in the middle don't participate as much as those two groups of people. And anecdotally, I don't have a real theory that for random control trials or something, but anecdotally, I think my hypothesis is that these two groups of people have more time on their hands. Everybody else has to work, and they're either retired or still in high school, right? And the second is that they kind of by default care less about their private interests and more about the public, about the next generation. One, because they're already retired, and the other because they are the next generation. And so if climate change gets really bad, they are the people who get hurt, right? And so the best petitions on the participation platform to ban plastic straws and things like that are actually from people who are 15 or 16 years old. And they're really good at social media marketing. And the idea, the idea that we always say here is the idea of reverse mentorship. So I'm 38 now, so I'm no longer young, right? So I should listen to young people, and the young people always show the direction, and the older people can make this direction happen. We can provide the momentum. But for example, this is from a reverse mentor of the Ministry of Labor, Wang Weixiang. You probably know him, and he is a social entrepreneur that works with those champions in world skills competition. So on the middle is the gold medalist of car painting, I think. And maybe cloud data center deployment or whatever. So they're champions, but not for sport, but for skills. And the reverse mentor, he was just 20-something when he became the Ministry of Labor's reverse mentor, said the ministry should visit Russia this year because they have world skills there. They crowdfunded this video about it and say they should join the National Day Parade not just sport champion, but skill champion should join the National Day Parade. And our premier, because he convenes the National Youth Council for the Cabinet, which is the 12 ministries, each has 2 reverse mentors of this kind, and they decided to say, oh, we will then not only include them in all the future national days, including this year, but also introduce them to the basic education and university system so they can work with the local students to revamp their schools. So that they learn things about skills, have a role model, and then increase the idea of sustainability, design, and so on, and community action based only starting from their basic education schools. And so those champions become role models and teachers for the students to follow. And I use this example saying that people who are in their teens and early 20s, I think are really pointing the future direction, and we should just follow that direction, but making sure that it's implemented really well. And so I think youth engagement is one of the reasons of those demographic differences. And also they cannot vote really, so the only thing they can do is to use these online platforms, because you have to be of 18 to vote in referendum and 20 to vote in representative, but the most creative people are in there 15 or 16 years old. And so again, they spend a lot of time on those platforms. So of course there are a demographic difference, but so far we think it's still somewhat healthy. And so yeah, that's I hope answer your question. All right, so
Thank you.
that's all we have.
Thank you.
So thank you. Yeah, feel free just to email me directly, and I will just go around and swap name cards.
ถ่ายรูป
Thank you.